Hi, welcome to Community Homeworks Workshop this evening. We're glad you're joining us. My name is Jason Byler, and I'm the Education Manager here at Community Homeworks. If you're watching this live, please comment to let us know where you're tuning in from. We like to know where folks are from. Also, if you'd like to join the discussion or ask a question, you can put that in the comment section as well. If you're watching this after the live broadcast, we're still happy you're joining us. And you can still ask questions in the comment section, but it might take a little longer for us to respond since we won't be standing by waiting for your questions. Community Homeworks is a nonprofit organization. We have a mission to empower homeowners to maintain safe, sustainable, and dignified homes. We get our funding from grants and gifts and donations. So if you find value in tonight's workshop, we encourage you to donate at our website. Our website is communityhomeworks.org, and that will be scrolling across the screen a little bit later. Tonight's workshop, we are going to be talking about storm window repairs. Storm windows are a great way to save on your energy bills, and especially if you have the old single pane wood windows. Our instructor for tonight is Julie Ryan, and Julie has taught this class numerous times for us. She is an authority, an expert on storm windows and screens. She's taught both classes for us. So if you have questions for Julie, please write them in and we will try to get them answered. We're thankful that Julie is here. Julie, welcome.
Hello. Hi, Jason. Hi, everyone. Glad that you're here today. Hopefully you will chime in and let us know where you're chiming in from. So we're going to talk about storm windows today. And in order to do that, it's a good idea to start talking a little bit about windows in general first. So let's say it's November and it's starting to cool off. It's a good idea to go through and check that your storm windows are in good shape. If we look at this, you can see that there are two glass panes, one on top and one on bottom. And then on the bottom, there's also a screen. And so you can, in the summertime, raise this bottom pane up, and then you can get some airflow in your house. Things that you want to look at to see if they're in good condition are these corner pieces that hold the glass in place. Those are called tilt keys, and they look like this. So it just fits right in here, and that turned a little bit better for you. And that is what actually holds those windows in on the corners. And those are a frequent piece that breaks. So keep an eye on those, and we'll come back to those. Another big part, what keeps them in on the bottom, I'm gonna tilt this up a little bit. This guy right here, that's called a slide bolt. And that's what keeps it locked in position at whatever height you have it at, as well as just keeping it from slipping out at the bottom. The bottom also uses separate corners. And another big part that's real important in the winter is this weather stripping. So you would ideally make sure that your weather stripping is in good condition as well. This particular window is called an exterior storm. It's going to go on the outside of a typically double hung single pane wood window. If your house has double pane windows, you probably don't need something like this unless they're really old, in which case you might be interested in doing some kind of interior storm. And we will talk a little bit more about interior storms later. So conditions that might be of concern with this kind of window is obviously if you have pieces that are broken, or if your weather stripping is in good shape. Other issues obviously could be that the glass is broken. And there's a couple ways you can address that, but it can be fixed for sure. It's not something that makes you need to throw it away. So most of the time, most problems with these can be fixed. And if you do get to a point where you'd be putting in a lot of money, you can buy them relatively inexpensively from stores in the area. So let's take one of these guys out and have a closer look. We magically changed colors. Wasn't that amazing? Magic of television. Okay, so this is essentially like the lower pane of that larger window that I just showed you. I'm going to lay it down so that you can see, hopefully, some of those parts that we were talking about on this version. This is a slide bolt. And again, that's what holds it in the bottom. We've got a little bit different style, but we've still got a tilt key up at the top here. And then our glass is intact on this one, so that's great. We don't have to worry about replacing the glass. And something that's really important is back here, this weather stripping that you can see goes around 3 sides. I don't know if you can see it better. I actually hold it up. This is like this little hairy line of fuzzy stuff. And this actually does a really important job of keeping the wind out and creating a good seal between the panes so that you don't get a lot of it. So you get a better air seal and you don't have more cold intrusion and heat loss. So this is one of the most inexpensive ways to make sure that your storm windows are in good shape, is to make sure that your weather stripping is in good shape. And that is something that you can buy easily at home stores, at local hardware stores like Gale's True Value and like Midtown Ace. Those types of stores usually sell that. And it's usually something that's fairly generic. You don't need anything super particular for. And it's something that's pretty easy for a homeowner to do. If you need to take out the old stuff, you can carefully use a utility knife to slice the old material, and then it'll just kind of fall out. And then usually you can, with the new stuff, just cut a diagonal so that you've got a little point. You fit it into the slot, and then you just kind of push, and it just works its way up that channel to replace it. All right. What else should we talk about? Any questions come in so far? Nothing yet. All right.
We had a little trouble with sound in the beginning.
Okay.
But it sounds like it's working now, so thank you for letting us know.
Well, I'm so glad that you guys can hear now. So let's talk about if you've got some broken parts for a minute. So we've got these slide bolts that we talked about. There are a number of varieties that you might encounter. And these parts are available often on the internet, locally. Local hardware, the smaller local hardware stores have them, and they have a pretty large variety of them. The big box stores might have one variety or something, but they probably don't have a big selection. So that's something that you could probably get locally at the smaller hardware stores, or even possibly a place like J&J Glass, something like that. And if you're not comfortable fixing this kind of part, if it's broken yourself, you can likely get that work done as well, although it would cost a little bit more. So same thing for these guys up here. Our tilt keys, if they break, there are a few varieties. This one right here is one that you can easily take out just with a simple hand tool. A screwdriver, you can push this little blunt end in and it will pop out. So you can do this without any power tools. This style that we're looking at right here has little dimples in this metal. And because of those dimples, it makes it a little bit more work. You often have to actually use a power drill to drill those dimples out to get this piece out. And then you replace it with a new one that takes the place of the old one. So those are the two main pieces that can be replaced. Corners, all four of them, the top ones are called tilt keys because they have that little extra tilt, but they're all corners. And then that slide bolt. The other thing that will sometimes hang you up is, you hear that terrible noise? That's a squeaky spring. Those work based on a spring, and that spring sometimes will break, sometimes it will be rusted, sometimes it will disintegrate and fall out, and so you just won't have any spring action. And those springs are easy to replace and very inexpensive. So that's another thing that you can typically fix on your storm window. So what should we talk about next? Do you want to do the interior storm, or do you want to talk a little bit more about parts?
Let's talk about interior storm just a little, and then if you want to get into replacing any of those corners or any of those kinds of things, we can take one of those windows apart.
Sounds great. All right, so this is a interior storm. This is actually kind of a DIY project. The idea, though, is that for an interior storm, you build a frame that will fit inside of your window, but about, I'm going to say in this case, a 1/2 inch smaller than the skinniest dimension. So you want to measure at the top of the window across, the bottom of the window, or the middle of the window across, and then the bottom of the window across. And the skinniest one, take that, go a 1/2 inch smaller, and then same for the height, measure the two corners in the middle, and then you build a small frame of wood. This is actually pretty simple, just like 1x2 pine that you can get anywhere, any local hardware store. You can easily glue or screw the corners together, and then you use this weather stripping material on the outside. And this is a product that is real cheap, you know, less than probably $5 for a package of it. And it's got a adhesive backing, and you can back that frame with it, and it will create what we call a pressure fit in the window that stays in there. So once you've built your frame, you want to, you're going to add plastic to it, and you can use a few different kinds of plastic. I think that this one is using what you would normally use if you have ever used a window insulation kit. That's just plastic that you stick to your window frame, and then you use a hair dryer and it takes all the crinkles out. So that's what this one is using. And what they've done here is really smart. They've gone around both sides. Hopefully you can kind of see that on the TV. There's plastic on both sides. So this is like a double air barrier. So you're going to get better insulation from this than you would if you just did a single side. So yeah, once you put that around, you do your hair dryer to make it nice and snug, and that gives you decent visibility still, if there wasn't the reflection of the computer. So you still get decent visibility on that. And at the end, you apply your weather strip, your foam weather strip on the outside. And this one is pretty smart. They've attached a couple of little handles just made out of tape that allow you to pull this in and out. Hopefully you can kind of see that on one of the views. And this one has also been made really efficiently because they stuck the plastic shrink wrap to the frame with the double-sided tape that comes with the plastic kit. So you can really make one of these pretty easily. And this would work great if you had awning windows. You can also use it for a double hung. You just have to make sure that you're going to have enough space on the interior of the window to fit it. Because a lot of times there's a lot of trim and molding on the inside of double hung windows, and it might be harder to get that nice pressure fit. So, sound good? Any questions from the gallery?
Not right now.
All right. All right, so we're gonna take apart a storm window and work on it. And I'm gonna put this up here so that you might be able to see what I'm doing. The fun of working under COVID conditions. Okay, so you can actually kind of see this, and hopefully it's not gonna fall down while I'm trying to take out the lower piece.
We can also move the camera around if that would be helpful, Julie.
So I seem to have it, so that's good. But I want you guys to be aware, if you are going to take one of these panels out, first you have to get one side out, and then you have to lift it and kind of turn it at an angle, and that releases it. It can't pull straight out because of those pins at the top and the bottom. All right, so let's say that you've got a broken corner on your storm window and you'd like to replace it, and this was your storm window. You would be able to do this one at home, which is super awesome, and you'd be able to do it with parts that would cost you less than $5, which is also super awesome. And I'm going to show you how you can do that. Let's see if we can make it work without a clamp. So you guys have probably done some hand tool classes. These are real simple hand tools that you're going to have at your house. Any kind of simple hammer that you have is going to be fine. A simple screwdriver, doesn't have to be extra long. Possibly a scraper like this. It can be straight. In fact, I would prefer straight, but this was the only one I could find, and it'll probably still work just fine. So these corners are what they call pressure fit. And so theoretically, you don't need to do a lot of work to get them out because they just use friction to stay in there. So let's see if while you guys are watching, I can have the right corner on the camera, which I can't seem to do right now. Okay, camera. All right, I am reverse corner challenged. All right, so this is the corner we're working on. And I've got a basic screwdriver and a basic hammer. And I'm just going to tap this in an up direction. And it should release from the glass and go up. I'm not going to go out from this direction, although I could. And the reason why I'm not going to do that is if you look at what happens if I pull this piece out this way I'm going to stress the other corner, the lower corner here. If I pull this piece out, it will put stress on this corner. So instead, it's important to think about the directionality. So if I'm going to go up, I'm going to go up on both ends, and it won't stress any other part of it. So let's hope that this will work. So I'm just going to give it a nice smack. I probably am going to need a clamp, but it's starting to separate. And you can maybe even see that yet, but not quite. Oh, fine, we'll get a clamp. We just might have to move the camera a little bit. Is there a clamp here?
I don't know if there's one there or not. I can hold it for you also.
That would work. That would work. 2 hands make things a lot easier. Thank you. Brilliant. I always used to do this work by myself. It never occurred to me to ask somebody for help. All right, so just gentle taps, and voila, that corner's come out. And it also allows you to see that there's another bit of weather stripping in here. This is called glazing. And that is also replaceable if you find that yours is dried out. And we're going to slide it back on. Sometimes it's a real pain. So for example, if I only wanted to fix this corner because the other one wasn't broken, I might just want to try to shove this back on, but the weather stripping on the far side has already popped out. So it's just easier to take the whole top off if you can. It's easier to work on it that way. You would do the same thing here in order to get this corner, this side of the corner out. Just tap it like that, and then you'll get the whole piece out, and then you just get a brand new one, and you pop it in and you put it back together just the way it was. I'm going to see if Jason will hold this for me again. And I might be able to get this side out, but I might not. And there's a reason for that, though I don't know if you can see it very well. So there is a dimple here. Even though these are friction fit corners, someone put a dimple in the metal. So this one may not come out super easily. If it doesn't, that's okay. We will have other options. So let's see if it'll, oh, we're in luck. Yay. So it actually wasn't a dimple. Well, it was, but it's already been drilled out. So that's why it worked. Lucky us. All right. So now you can see this framework. It's very simple. It's just a channel that is U-shaped. And this channel is actually even replaceable. In some locations, you might be able to get some on the internet. You might be able to get some at a place like J&J Glass or at like Gale's True Value. So, or depending on where you're at, because some of you are from further out, maybe you're going to Bob's True Value or somebody else's glass that is up there. I'm trying to think of the name of it, but it's not coming to me. So that was actually pretty simple, I hope you agree with me. And then if you did want to keep taking this apart, because maybe your glazing isn't in good shape and it's not creating a good air seal, you'd want to work on the bottom the same way you work on the top. So just to demonstrate, I'm not going to go real far with this because we don't have to take it all the way apart unless you want to. But you'd want to, with the same idea, work in the direction that doesn't stress the opposite corner. So we'd want to take the top off toward the top and the bottom off toward the bottom. And I don't think we actually need to take the whole bottom off. This weather stripping is actually in very good shape, or this glazing. Some people call it glazing. Some people call it weather stripping. There are sort of two different kinds of weather stripping. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this back on. We're going to pretend that we put in our new friction fit corner, which we would have done exactly the same way. I do want to caution you to pay attention when you disassemble this, because now I've got this completely off, right? And it has two different sides. It has a side without weather stripping and a side with weather stripping. So which side is supposed to go up? Well, it should hopefully be fairly obvious, and the frame sort of shouldn't quite line up right if you have it upside down, but that's not always the case. So a pretty good, there's no real good rule of thumb to it, except that if it's the lower window, the weather stripping should be on the back. And if it's the upper window, there's a possibility that there's weather stripping on the front. So it's a good idea to keep track. One of the ways you can do that that's really simple, and I use a lot, is I just make a mark at each corner. So I'll just make an X across both sides, and then I can always match up the two pieces that went together before back together, so that I put together the same way that I took it apart. So it's always a good idea to take a picture, make a little mark, something to help you make sure that you put it back together the way you took it apart. And you want to be gentle when you're doing this. You are working with glass. You have just put a bunch of effort into it. You don't want to break the glass if you can help it. And ideally, you don't want that glazing to slip out. So I usually just go back and forth. I hope you can hear me over the hammering. I'm sorry. Just go back and forth gently. Sometimes you'll find that the side will kind of slide out of position. Like this side slid out of position a little bit. So I'm just tapping it back in so that that top will come back down where it's supposed to be. And I urge you not to do what I just did. I urge you not to put your hammer on the tilt key, because then you will just have to start over when that breaks. For reasons that I'm not sure that one doesn't want to come back together. And sometimes it's because the glass will have slipped out at the bottom and it will have lifted up, and that's why it doesn't want to go in. Sometimes something as simple as that can help seat it, but I really don't know why it doesn't want to go back in. So rather than break it, oh, you know what? Our weather stripping slipped out is kind of what it looks like. Or our glazing. It's kind of caught up. That's one of the, it's one of those things. It seems like it should be easy. And then sometimes you just got to redo it. But this one is giving me a hard time. So it should make you feel better if you try to do this on your own. That it may take a little bit of effort, but you'll get there. And even when people that are experienced do it, it doesn't always go super smoothly. And this one is just killing me right now, because my glazing has slipped out. And I gotta see if I can get it to slip back in without taking this other corner off again. I don't think it's gonna do. Well, anyway, we shall move on and persevere.
We have a couple questions.
Super.
April wants to know, does the same principle work for screen windows?
It does for many screen windows. For example, I I'm sorry to leave you guys, but I'll be right back. This is the screen window from that whole storm. And it has these same friction fit tilt keys. And it has the same slide bolts. There is one huge difference when you're working with the screen. You can't take this apart without taking out the screen. You can try, but it is pretty difficult, and it's probably easier to just replace the screen because the screen material is cheap, and it's a pretty simple process. So it absolutely does work the same for screens. It's just a little bit different set of steps. Other questions?
Do storm windows use regular glass, or is it something special?
It is not special. It is, it's called single strength glass. That is what is in most storm windows. Super high quality ones occasionally will use a double strength glass. It's relatively uncommon. I wouldn't worry about it. Most of the time, if you just go to the hardware store and ask for regular glass, or go to the big box store and buy a piece of glass, it's just going to be the regular single strength glass that they have. Great questions. Great questions.
That's all we have?
That's all we have? Okay.
That's all we have for questions.
All right. Well, since we've got this screen here, it's going to work the same for this screen as for that storm window, but we can also fix these slide bolts or replace them if one of them is broken, as well as that spring. Oh, see, this one's got a sticky spring. We can fix that. And we just need a simple tool that is kind of small at the tip. Like, this is a nail set. You don't have to have anything fancy like that. You just have a little screwdriver, like a little tiny flathead screwdriver, like one of those little eyeglass screwdrivers. There's a little pin right here, and that is the only thing holding this in place, I think. I might be lying. No, I think I'm telling you the truth. But I think this is too big to fit in the hole. So I just need a different tool. Fortunately, I'm standing in front of a whole bunch of tools. And that's the one I want. So you just need a small flathead screwdriver for this. That is the most effective tool, but other things can be used as well.
Is there one there or not?
There sure is. So just a small flathead screwdriver. You've probably seen these around. You probably have a bunch of them that look like pens sitting around your house. And now you can push that in and then easily pull this out. And there's our spring that's making all the noise. And this little guy on the end, the little tab that holds it in, it's called a dog. So, funny thing that hopefully you'll remember for the rest of your life, this is called a spring and a dog. So we've got a fresh spring and dog. And I usually will clean out this track, use like a nylon brush, a toothbrush, clean out the track a little bit. You might, wipe a little bit of silicone in there or something to make it slide easily. And then you put your spring and dog back in the part of the slide bolt, just where it was before. And you slide your slide bolt in. You get your little doggy in there. You're going to have some spring hanging out. You want to get that seated as you slide it in. If I get my own finger out of my way. It is hard to do this and show you guys without putting my fingers in the way, so I apologize for any blocking of what's happening that is happening. So as you slide this thing back into its home, boom, there was a little click. And that dog grabbed in the hole. It still squeaks. So the silicone would have been a good idea. But you could have fixed this broken piece. I can tell you that this piece would cost you about $1.25, and like a little guy, the little springing dog, would cost you about 50 cents. So for less than $2, you could have fixed that piece if it was broken on your screen or storm window at home. A little bit of effort, a little bit of elbow grease, not a lot of money to make these things work a lot better. Any other questions?
Nope, that's all we've got right now.
All right.
Is there anything else you want to share, or do you want to?
Let's see. I've got some notes. Let me see if I covered everything on them. Yeah, there are definitely some concerns, some safety concerns if you're working with a storm window like this. If you are taking the whole unit off the outside of your house, you may have issues with it being painted in, and there might be lead paint associated with that. So it's a good idea to just be aware of that. Lead paint is always a concern in older houses. If you have broken glass associated with your project, it's a good idea to wear gloves and put tape over the broken areas as much as you can. Not as much tape as possible. You don't necessarily need to do that, but enough so that it's not going to stab you, enough so that like parts of the glass aren't going to come flying out. So those are some safety considerations. Most of what you can fix on an installed exterior storm window, you access from the inside of the house. So just because it's a second story window doesn't mean you can't work on it, because you're going to access both of the window panes and the screen from the inside. Usually you kind of have to get the, the double hung window pane kind of up and out of the way, and then you have to kind of jiggle it. It's very much like a puzzle. Trying to get these things in and out, but you do it from the inside. You would only need to be on the outside of the house if you were installing a brand new one or taking one off. And typically, if you needed to take some part of this in to be repaired, you can just take the single unit. Like say, this glass is broken, and you've been working on it for 2 hours and you're just kind of done with it and you want to take it to somebody else. That's the only part you need to bring in. You don't have to bring in the entire unit. If the entire unit is in bad enough shape that you think the whole thing needs to be worked on, throw it in the garbage and buy yourself a new one. They are inexpensive, and they are expensive to fix relative to the cost of buying a new one. So hopefully that makes sense. And you can get them custom if you need it to be brown. They can make it brown. It just might be a little more expensive than if you took one off the shelf. So let's see. If you need the glass replaced, you can bring the frame, like say you've got just the empty frame and the glass is missing. You can bring the empty frame into a glass place and they can cut you a piece of glass based on the frame size, if you're not comfortable measuring that yourself. Places around town that cut glass is going to be Ace Hardware, Gales, J&J Glass, and Lowe's also does glass cutting. The other places, as far as I know, sell glass, but they don't cut it for you. So you have to get like a glass cutter and do it by hand, which is it's not hard. It's easy, but if you can have somebody else do it for the same price, I always like to have somebody else do it for the same price. If you need to replace parts parts. There are so many parts, the slide bolts, the corners, the tilt keys. If you need to replace parts, bring an old part into the store with you so that you have an example of what your part looks like, because there are, literally 12 to 15 varieties of any of these things. And they can be varying sizes. Can be really hard for somebody to just guess at what parts you need to replace or fix your current issue. So that's important to bring those pieces in if you are trying to get something like that replaced. And oftentimes they can tell you how to replace it there on the spot. They'll be like, oh yeah, you're just gonna have to do this and do that. Kind of like this class, except in 5 minutes at a counter. So if you are replacing the screen, it's important to be aware of the spline that holds the screen in. And I do a whole class on screens and screen repair. But if you are, thinking about doing this as a winter project because you don't need your screens in your windows during the winter, and you want to do this, bring your old spline in so that somebody can give you the appropriate sized spline to go in. Standard window screen is pretty much fine for everybody. They have that at most any store. I do recommend going to like a Gale's kind of place for spline, because you can buy just as much as you need instead of buying a bunch of stuff that you're only going to use some of. You can also get foam spline, which is super easy to work with relative to the kind of older style rubber spline. Question? Nope, I thought you signaled. Dang it. Well, if there aren't any other questions, did I miss anything? Just a real quick, this is a different style screen that goes with a different style window, but it also has some simple parts that can also be replaced very easily by a homeowner. These corners that will sometimes break, these are called plungers that hold them in. They'll sometimes break. You can easily replace those by yourself as well, and those parts are available at most hardware stores. You can even rebuild one of these, which we talk about in the screen class. So if you have more questions about screens, you should check out the screen repair class whenever it happens. Next.
All right. Oh, I'm still listed as overhead. That's kind of fun. Great class again, Julie, as always. Lots of great information. I did have one person, Ben had written in near the end of class asking about tool loaning that we do here at Community Homeworks, and we actually have that on hold right now. We're trying to work out some details with having a more inclusive tool lending library, working with some other organizations in the area. So Ben, I will reach out to you separately and try to talk to you about that if that's something you're interested in. But we do try to help people out when we can with the tools that we have, but we just don't have enough tools all the time to do that. So it's something we're working on right now.
Yeah, I will say that like a plain hammer at, a plain like little hammer, like, this or this these are very inexpensive. It doesn't mean they're not expensive if you don't have money. So, even if they only cost $2 is a lot if you don't have money. So I understand that, but you don't have to spend like, $40 or $20 or even $10 on a hammer or, a screwdriver. You can just buy the $1 or $1.99 one and it's going to work just as well.
Are there any other questions out there in Cyberland? And what is that called? Not Cyberland.
The internet.
The interwebs. If there are, please write them in now. If not, you'll have to wait for an answer later.
So sorry if I talk fast and block everything with my hands because I'm a camera challenged, but hopefully you got something good out of this class and you feel empowered to do a little bit of work on your stuff at home.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Julie. We really appreciate you taking the time to spend the evening with us tonight. Always a great wealth of information. Next Tuesday, we have another class. Next Tuesday's class will be electrical systems, basically an overview of what is going on with the electrical in your house and what kinds of safety devices are there and all that sort of thing. We won't be teaching you how to rewire your house, sorry. We just want you to understand what's going on in your house. So if you have to hire somebody, hopefully you are informed enough to know what they're doing. And our instructor for that will be Tim Johnson. That will be next Tuesday at 6 p.m. Thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. And thank you again, Julie, for being here. Great to see you.
Thank you, Jason, and thank you everybody that was watching. Yay.